going through a lot of open source Docker files that are out there for Rails, and going through the best practices and trying to incorporate that in a new Dockerized Rails app. So for the base, I'm using one of the microhalters Rails application, and I'm trying to Dockerize this. So the focus is on reducing the size of the image, because size matters a lot in the Docker world. And the reason for this is because usually these images you are storing on your cloud servers, and then you are like to run CI/CD pipelines. You are downloading images, uploading images to set up your production server. You are again downloading images and uploading images. So it's all this time you are paying for the network traffic to the cloud compute, to the cloud software, maybe AWS. So yeah, so basically, the shorter the image, the less expensive it will be. The other thing is with the size of the image is the smaller is the image, it gives less surface uh, for the attacks. So it's for the better security. And also for agility, like the smaller the image, then it takes less time to develop and it takes less time to build. So yeah, and also like we have to see like a Docker image is basically one process that is loaded in your RAM. So if you have a Docker image of 1.5 GB, that means that this whole image is loaded in your RAM, and you need at least 1.5 GB RAM. So like if you have this smaller image, again, you will be not occupying so much RAM of the computer. And to start with, like for the image, like we start usually with base image, which is on line 28 here. So there are like there are multiple options for the base image, but I will talk about two. One is Alpine, which is a very small distribution of Linux based on Muscle libc implementation, which is what you will find in a lot of blogs. Like if you go and search like, hey, how to optimize my Docker image, so everybody will be like use Alpine because it's the base image is of 5 MB versus the other one is Debian. And for the Debian Slim, the base image is, I think, around 150 MB. So it's 145 MB right there. So Alpine is, but like Alpine is a good choice if you have a small service, in my opinion, or if you are doing a small, probably Hello World application. But in my experience in the past, like I've like using like Debian has always been like peace of mind because it has more support, bigger, larger community. And in any real world application, you would probably need a bunch of extensions and applications, and Alpine doesn't have all. Like Alpine has 10,000 packages versus Debian, which has 50,000 packages, and it has large like big corporations pumping money into developing it. So which means it's more secure and more stable. So like I always recommend to use Debian if you don't know how your application will look like in future, or what you will need to implement feature wise or extension wise. But if you have a small service that you build it one time and don't need to change it more often, then Alpine could be an option, given that it has all the packages. So the second thing we can do to optimize our image is use multi-stage builds. So what happens in so what do we do is like Docker is executing every command like this. So it's one command for Docker, and it's building a layer. And in the end, when your image is like finally ready, it's like the the summation of these layers, the size. So with multi-stage, what we can achieve is we can install like our gems or node packages, or like also compile our assets, basically build our application in one stage, and then we can move on to next stage where what we do is we copy the artifacts, the code that we need, and the extensions that we built in the second stage, and then we discard the first stage. And this greatly we reduce the size of the final image. To give you an example, so here in uh, so here I compiled a uh, I built a Docker image, and like this 791 MB would be the size of the image if I was using one stage, and with multi-stage I was able to bring it down to 284 MB. So this is a big gain in. So it's not only like when it's 284 MB, it's also like bunch of other things. But like yeah, you can at least save a lot of space with that. The second, the other thing is like we can remove all the unnecessary files that you don't need in your final production version to run your application, which are like, for example, like you install like in a Rails application, you would probably install a lot of gems, and a lot of these gems will come with their own test files, with their own spec files, with their own markdown files, with their own documentation. So in like we can remove all of that here. Like for example, this in this code, we are just cleaning everything that we don't need in the gems. Uh, and the other thing to remove would be the files and folders that are in your application that you don't need in the final version of the image to deploy. So if you go to, so here I have done this. This is a certain argument, which is basically these are argument folders to remove. And in the end, I am running this command, which is remove all the folders that I give to this argument. And here are the folders that we can actually remove from a Rails application that we won't need in the final image. And some like I would like to highlight on app assets, because this usually has images and which is taking a lot of space. And once we pre-compile assets, we don't need these assets here because they are served statically. Uh, and also node modules, like this is also a folder with like a huge folder. Like when I do both of this, I could save up to 200 MB of space again. Um, because after compiling assets, you don't need node modules. They're again served statically. So this too, for me alone saves 100 MB, which is a big plus, and which I didn't find in a lot of online blogs or guides that were on Rails development. So, so to give a better performance for build time, the other thing I want to talk about is the order of these steps. So, like when you run the command in the Docker file, what you would want to achieve is maximum caching. So, what does that? What that means is the the files that changes in your application directory, uh, like you should put them as little as possible in the command line chain. So for example, here I am copying gem file and package yarn JSON file. And first I'm doing yarn install and then I'm doing bundle install because I know that in this particular application I will change gems more often than JavaScript packages. So with this, what will happen is it will in the maximum time it will try to use the caching for in this step on line number 58. And on line number 68, when 61, when it sees that there are changes to the gem file, it will invalidate this cache and all the following caches. So yeah, so this is one of the steps also that I didn't find in a lot of blogs, but like writing the order of the command is like it should be in what you think will change more often in your app should come in the end. So if in my case, if in other case, like if I have a SPA and I have a I have an API, but it doesn't change often, but my like front end changes often, then I would do yarn install after the bundle install command. So I will then use the maximum caching for the build time. And yeah, and there are two tools that are super helpful to also like inspect your image and try to bring down the size. So one is formlatest.io. So it's not up to date with multi-stage builds, but it's okay. It can still give you a pretty good result. So what you can do is you can take your gem file, you can copy it here, and then it will give you all the optimization you can still make in your Docker file to give you optimal image. Oh, and one more thing I missed before was Docker ignore. So it's a very important file. It's similar to git ignore, but for Docker. So this tells Docker to ignore to upload these files to your image. And also this can save a lot of space because you might have files like database, your SQLite database or logs, or you compiled assets on your local machine. So you don't push this on the in the image and yeah, and try to save this space because you don't need this. Also, this very important, which a lot of guides are missing because they were written for Rails 5 and then Rails 6. You have a storage folder which stores the images of active storage, and in development you store it there, but what you store in development you don't need it in the production, and this can get too huge, too big, and if you just ignore the files inside this will also save you a lot of space. And there was another tool that I want to talk about is oops, yeah, Docker history command. So if I do Docker history and give the name of my image, it will give me like the commands it executed and the impact of this command. So if for this command I executed, uh, I created 2.62 MB in the final image, and for this command I added 68.8 MB. So you can use the Docker history command to inspect what what commands from your Docker file, like basically these commands, which commands are creating how much footprint and you can try to either combine them, merge them together if you can, or try to like reduce the clutter. So for me, this helps a lot. Like this, like helps me to pinpoint, okay, this line is adding 68 MB. So okay, maybe somehow I would want to, like for example, these two lines is this to the thing here, which is almost adding 170 MB. And what I would try to do here is maybe the the gems in the project directory itself in vendor file, and then execute only one copy command. Because every copy command you execute builds a layer and it's expensive. Um, so yeah, and usually like you can the Docker history. The way I do this is I because it's also a bit annoying to read this exact command. So uh, yeah, so what I usually this is my go-to command to pinpoint the commands uh, that have a footprint is create a table and then export it into CSV, and then like it becomes easy for me to visualize like here like what was the command and what was the footprint. Yeah, so these are like my findings until now. So I'm working more on this, and I'm trying to see how else can we optimize the Docker image? Like for example, what I said, like installing all the gems also in the project directory itself, and issuing only one copy command. The other thing that could be experimented is to create a different stage to precompile assets instead of doing it in the build stage. We are here basically uh, doing bundle install as well as precompiling assets and doing yarn install. So maybe we can segregate here in the sense like you have one stage that does the gem installation, and then you have another stage that does the yarn installation. And I mean, like this will not achieve the this will not affect any the size, but it could affect the caching and thus the performance at the build time. The other thing I'm experimenting with is also maybe compiling assets on the local machine and then pushing it. But I don't know what will be the impact of this. So maybe I can share when I find it on the channel. Um, yeah, this were my findings, and I can share my Docker file later with the team. You can look at the Docker file and see like there are like very small, minute adjustments I have done here and there. Like for example, yarn cache clean is also helping. Uh, yeah, and like removing all the markdown and the documentation. So I'm still doing more investigation, still like trying to strip everything off that I really don't need in production and see how small the image I can get. Yeah. And in this, like, for example, in the last company that I was working, it was really important to have a small size because we were using Concourse, which is an absolutely dumb system. And to do everything, it downloads the image and then execute the command. Even to send a Slack message, it will download the whole image and then send the Slack message. And this was costing them a lot of money in network traffic usage. So like even by like reducing the size by 200 MB or 300 MB and doing the Scrum development, you could shoot to save between 10,000 to 25,000 dollars per year in your AWS billing. Yeah, so this was this is it, my finding, and I'm gonna make more progress, and I will share on the channel.
Great, Bhushan. Thank you so much for sharing your findings.
Yeah.
Josh and Slavik, any comments, questions, feedback?
Yeah. Well, thanks first of all for there was a lot of things in here which like some things I didn't know about, and a lot of good ideas. So thank you very much for that. So one thing I see being done a lot is like in line 61, you've got a run command here in the Docker file,
Yeah. Yeah.
and instead of like splitting this up into lots of different run commands, you've
Mhm.
got all these shell commands in one thing. That
Yeah.
basically means we only have one layer instead of like
Yeah.
10, however many.
Yeah.
Does that affect the size? Is that why you do it?
Yeah. Yeah. To again, uh, yeah, basically, what you try to do is, so every command that you will run, like this line number 58, line number 57, line number 61, line number 77, every command that you run will create another layer. And in the end, the final image will be the summation of all these layers. When I am when on line 61, when I am like combining all these commands in one run command, so it's only one layer uh, that is that is being created. So it really helps to save a lot of size. I mean, like we can experiment. I can do run everywhere and remove all of this. So the second thing is when like when if like doing like this until this and then doing this in separate run command will be a bit useless because you in you will still have all these files in this layer, and then in the next layer you will remove these files, so it doesn't make so much sense to do it anyways then.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, cool. Um, I have some more questions.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Shoot.
so I noticed with all the optimization going on in the Docker file,
Mm-hmm.
it looks like you're basically preparing an image for production, and in
uh
the
yeah.
Docker Compose file, it looked like you're using this for development. And so my uh, question here is like, do you
Mm-hmm.
what's your approach? Do you use the same image for development and production, or
Mm-hmm.
if you split it, do you have a certain method for doing that?
Mm. So I don't use Docker for development because it's just slowing me down a lot
Right.
to do anything, and also I like to use like a proper debugger, and Docker has some limitations there.
Yeah.
So for development, so the reason that you see the difference is because I was experimenting a little bit here. But usually I would use Docker images only for running CI/CD pipelines and spinning the production server. But for development on my local machine, I still use the old classic way uh, because
Right.
if I make a change in code, then I have to rebuild the image again, which could take anywhere between 5 minutes to 20 minutes. Then I'm waiting and looking at it, and also the debugger tools are not so nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I've tried both. I've tried both approaches,
Mhm.
and I know I worked on one project where we were having a lot of issues on staging and production that we weren't getting in like on our development machines, and
Mhm.
sort of standardizing on um, like using Docker for everything, using it for local development really helped us to keep everything like everyone
Mhm.
have it, using the same environments.
Mhm.
And one just one trick or one thing that I can recommend there is to use bind mounts instead of like copying code files into the Docker file itself. That's great for development.
Bind mounts, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, I will check this out. Okay, cool.
Because then basically you're just using the files from your host machine, and that can be really great for development. It's not always not necessarily the best approach for a production image, and that sort of leads to the scenario where you might want to have different images for development and production, and multi-stage builds can help with that. But in the end, like you said, the whole debugging experience is much better. Like if you want to use LSP or something, you'll have a hard time if you're using Docker. So I tend to do it the way you described as well, and avoid Docker for development now. But I'm always I hope that there'll be a way to sort of bring those worlds together soon.
Yeah, at the moment it's very, very poor, the experience. So what I do is like generally when I'm doing like day-to-day coding, I am not using Docker, but when I'm like finally like pushing it for merging the two branches and running CI/CD on this, then just before that, I will also try to build the local Docker image and see if that succeeds, and then I push it to the server. So I still create the Docker Compose file for development, but I don't use it to make any changes to the code, just to see if it actually builds
on
the local.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and the last point I have here, it's not so much a question, but just could you show the Docker Compose file again? Do you have anything interesting going on in there, or is it all just in the Docker file?
I think nothing. It's just a regular Docker file, Docker Compose file. I haven't come to optimizing this yet. I spent so much time on just Docker file. The problem is like every time you make an optimization and then you're waiting in front of it for like 5 to 20 minutes for it to actually build the image so you can test what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's taking a lot of time. But like this folders to remove was a very big plus for me.
I
It
really
saves a
like
lot
that.
of space. And also this this type itself saved me on this in this format 35 MB, and this step saved me. Have I written it here? Yeah, it was almost like 100 MB.
Right.
Yeah,
cool.
100 MB. Yeah, this whole step.
And I just thought of one more question.
Yeah.
Now that you've sort of the Docker file has stabilized a bit, would you now maybe try it out again with an Alpine base?
I will, like, eventually at one point I would want to do with Alpine, but I am not super convinced about Alpine personally. Like, I used it on one project and we started with Alpine, and then it was like all like, wow, this Alpine, wow, it's like a more hipster thing. And then we were implementing GEOS libraries, and boom, Alpine doesn't work there anymore because Alpine doesn't have packages for GEOS. So then I had to rewrite everything in Debian. And now the problem is not just that you will change this line number 28 and then everything will be working again. It's like you have to redo everything because the packages are named different, the flags are different, the system we say user permissions are different. So it was like just time wasted. So I wouldn't recommend using Alpine for any serious projects. And also, like, I was reading a little bit more about this. So in the the Postgres driver implementation of Alpine is not as good as the the Debian implementation. And when you are querying multiple, like 10,000 records in one query, or like more than that, then like you really hit into performance issues with Alpine.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, like so even though it's smaller, but it's the security wise, it's not the best option. Because like this implementations, they are more of like people who just did it than actually like stable version, which like thousands of enterprise companies are using them in production. So yeah. Yeah, and so also with Alpine, I ran into some issues even before GEOS, some weird package issues that I didn't know how to solve, and there was absolutely no help available online.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah. Thanks. Thanks very much.
Yeah. You're welcome. I will share this once I have to do two more things with this image, and once I do them, I will share share in the Slack channel, and hopefully this will help. Yeah.
Very good. How about you, Slavik? Any questions, comments, feedback?
No, I don't have any questions, but I have like two observations. So the first one would be that all those optimizations greatly overlap with what I can do for Java projects. Plus, I since version 9 of Java, there's also an option for picking a particular modules from Java. So I don't have to use the full and complete Java runtime environment, but only a specific modules that my project will rely on, and that also greatly cuts the size of the final image. So that's one thing. And regarding the Docker Compose, I normally use Docker Compose for setting up local environment. So obviously my application is one image, but that image normally needs the environment. And normally I use Docker Compose for setting up this environment. So database, some other services, and that's that. But yeah, so those are my 2 cents.
I also use Docker Compose for CI, like for making CI/CD pipelines. Also, often I need to link external services to my image, and there I can use also Docker Compose to link them. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other than that, great presentation. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I'm still trying to more optimize. If you have any comments on if you've done anything to optimize it even more, yeah, let me know, and I will try to experiment with that.
Yeah, you mentioned it yourself, the idea of splitting the stages, like for instance, the yarn install and the bundle install into stages.
Yeah.
That would probably mean that it doesn't really matter which order they're in then, with the layering for the caching, right?
No. That will be really amazing if when it happens. Yeah, with the caching, yeah. Yeah, then it won't matter. Yeah.
Yeah, great idea.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Bhushan, thank you so much for taking the time to share your insights today.